Hi everybody, Miss Ashleigh here, and I am on location at the beautiful Muskoka Brewery in Bracebridge, Ontario. And I am here with the lead brewer, Mr. Will Garrett, because I have some very important beer questions to ask Mr. Will. Because Miss Sarah and I are going to be making some homemade pretzels and beer cheese dip inspired by Oktoberfest. So we need to know what is the best beer for this recipe. That way we give you the best recipe. So, Mr. Will, what do we got here?
Well, today I brought out a selection of our German style lagers. So we've got our craft lager. You've probably seen this if you've been around town before. It's the blue can. This is a German style Helles beer. It's 5%. It's made with barley and some caramel malt and a little bit of dextrin malt. Really easy drinking, really refreshing, and it comes in around 13 on the IBU scale. I also brought out our Tread Lightly, which is another German style of beer, a light lager. It's coming in at 4%, and it's a little bit more bitter than the craft lager, despite actually being a lighter beer in terms of alcohol.
We have our friends, Mr. Hornet here. So if you see me smacking myself during this video, it's because of this guy. Okay, so we have two samples here. So this one is Mr. Blue Can. And you said the IBU. So what exactly is an IBU?
Glad you asked. So IBU stands for International Bittering Units. It's a scale that we measure beer on. Where 0 being the lowest, zero bitterness at all, and then upwards to about 100, where you can have a beer that sort of tastes like you're eating a bag of lawn clippings.
Why would anybody ever want to brew 100 IBU beer? That sounds terrible.
That's a great question. I don't know personally. I've never had one, and I don't think I ever will. Just to put it into perspective, an IPA, which is traditionally an India Pale Ale, is something that people think of as being quite bitter. It ranks around 40 on the IBU scale.
Oh wow, so definitely not 100. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this one here, this is a Tread Lightly. So this is different. How about the calories? Is this lighter than this?
Yeah, so the light lager is lighter in terms of calories as well. So believe it or not, most of the calories in beer come from the alcohol. So a tall can of Tread Lightly is 150 calories, whereas craft lager would be a little over 200.
Wow. So for those of us who put on like the COVID pounds, we should be like treading lightly with the calories.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. See, there's no stopping me now, guys. Calorie reduced COVID. I'm beering it up, man. And it's crazy. This does not taste like a light beer. This has got some flavor. It's like flavor for days.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
We worked really hard to make sure that this beer would still end up tasting like a good craft beer. So we employed a couple of processes on the brewing side where we retained some of the sugars that the malt produces. We added a little bit more hops to kind of give it a little bit more of a bite. So while the IBUs on this measure around 17 as opposed to the craft lager at around 13, there's a little bit more flavor, a little bit of stuff going on behind the scenes where you end up with a beer that still ends up tasting like beer and not a watered down version.
Yeah, like it's actually, you wouldn't even know. Like you would not seriously know that. So then what's a German style beer?
There are a lot of German styles of beer. Obviously a Helles lager or a Pilsner is going to be your lightest style of German beer. Something you might be familiar with is an Oktoberfest style, sometimes also referred to as a Märzen. A Märzen, the traditional German pronunciation, of course. So Märzen in Germany actually means March, and I'll tell you why. Beer brewing was originally forbade between the months of April and September because it was too hot. So when you're brewing back in the 1500s, you don't really have any sanitation, you're not protecting your beer from bacteria or wild yeast. So if you brewed between April and September, there was a pretty good chance that beer was going to turn out sour. So what they did was clamor to brew as much beer as they could in March. They called it Märzen, March beer, and then they would put it underground and store it cold in dry caves. Then, you guessed it, when October rolled around, you're allowed to brew beer again. They would bring the beer out and they'd have a big party called Oktoberfest to celebrate the fact that they could once again brew beer.
Okay, so I was there opening day, Oktoberfest, and it was insane. It was like everything you think of, it actually is. And
Did you get the big 1 liter
oh yeah,
steins
the
of
big
beer?
2 huge steins, and it was ice cold.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how it was ice cold beer, and it was like 3 million people, but it was fabulous.
Do you know what impresses me is when I see them carrying out 10 different steins.
I know, mad props.
I don't think I could do that.
I don't think I could either. So for our recipe, which we're gonna make pretzels. So I'm not a baker, as these guys know. I am terrible, but I try really hard. So which one of these guys would be best for the pretzel?
Great question. So I have done some baking in the past. I've actually made pretzels and beer cheese dip using our products. For the pretzels, I put craft lager.
Okay.
So the reason I used craft lager was because Tread Lightly didn't exist at the time. But also, when you cook using beer, sometimes the bitterness intensifies. So you want to use a beer that's relatively low in IBUs. So at 13 IBUs, this isn't going to make your pretzels taste bitter or gross. So I would definitely recommend using the craft lager.
Okay, so for the cheese dips, I'm gonna be putting like lots of cheddar and like some garlic. So like what will hold well with that?
So I would use an Oktoberfest style beer for that. So typically Oktoberfest beers are quite light, they're quite easy drinking, they're lower in IBUs, but they also have toasty, nutty, bready, caramelly type flavors. And when you blend that in with cheese, you end up with an amazing
Oh
pairing.
my god, you said caramel. Toasty, nutty. It's like you're saying baking terms, like toasty, caramel, like not like for a beer, but like those sound really good actually.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I will totally use that. And so is beer vegan?
Yes, for the most part. So under the Bavarian Purity Act, which was another sort of German beer law, the ingredients for beer, you can only use barley, hops, water, and yeast. So under traditional Bavarian purity law, or the Reinheitsgebot, if you prefer, Reinheitsgebot,
No way. Okay.
then yes, beer would be vegan.
Okay.
There are certain instances in which some ingredients might have been added to beers that are not considered vegan, but if you're drinking a traditional German beer, you should only have 4 ingredients.
Just 4 ingredients.
And it's fully vegan.
And so not the toasty caramel marshmallow chocolate chip variety. Those do
Absolutely
sound
not.
amazing. So I've also heard that you guys do a super cool program called the Moonlight Kettle.
We do.
What is that?
The Moonlight Kettle is a really fun program for people like me. I get tired of brewing the same stuff every day, so when we brew a Moonlight Kettle beer, it's 1 brewer and then 2 people from outside of the brewing department. So I've worked with everyone from the president of the company to forklift drivers, delivery drivers, people on the packaging line. You come together and you create an idea for a beer that everyone's going to be happy brewing. You work along the entire process together, and then at the end, everyone has ownership over this amazing project. You drink it, and everyone has a great time.
Wow. So what's the one for coming up?
Then you asked. So we're actually brewing a German-style Helles beer
Get out.
for our November Moonlight Kettle. We missed October by a month, of course, but you can drink it a month later. Pretzels and beer cheese dip are still good in November, and it's going to be a Helles lager. So make sure you check it out and congrats on that.
Awesome. So what is your favorite thing about being a lead brewer? For all the kids who are like, what? There's a job being a lead brewer? How do I do that? That sounds super helpful.
This is going to sound really nerdy, but brewing is a job that incorporates an enormous amount of science and math. You can break it down to an exact science and produce the exact same beer every single time. So much like baking, if you're weighing out your ingredients and you're following the recipe and hitting the times and temperatures, it's the exact same thing for brewing to make sure that when you drink this craft lager today, it's going to taste the same as when you drink it in a month, in 6 months, and a year from now.
So not for me, because as we all know, I don't follow the directions and I barely get my stuff turning out properly. But so people like you, people like me cannot. I will stick to reading books for the children, and you can stick to making really, really great beer. Seriously, guys, this beer is legit awesome. Like, this stuff here tastes like you would never even know you were treading lightly. So, you know what? Don't tread lightly, run fast, because this stuff is totally worth drinking. Anyway, thank you, Will, for this beautiful day at this beautiful brewery. It was a really great beer. So I'm going to hopefully make some good pretzels and some good cheese dip.
I look forward to it.
Fingers crossed. Okay, bye.